The relentless, wheezing drone of the ancient window unit air conditioner in my tiny off-campus apartment had become the dreary anthem of my existence. For weeks, it had battled the oppressive summer heat while I, in turn, battled the mountain of bar exam material threatening to consume my every waking thought. Maya, my girlfriend, my rock, my fellow law school survivor, was patiently drilling me on the finer points of contract law, her voice a soothing counterpoint to the AC's rattle and the frantic scribbling of my highlighter. It was in this crucible of stress and lukewarm coffee that my phone buzzed. Mom, probably the weekly guilt trip about not calling enough, or another excited update on Ethan's fabulous life. Adam, sweetie, you will not believe it. Mom's voice, usually a carefully modulated alto, was practically shimmering with an almost girlish excitement. Your father and I, well, we've just done the most wonderful thing for Ethan. We paid off his student loans. Every last penny of them. $300,000, Adam, just gone. Poof. He can start his career at Sterling and Cromwell completely fresh. No burdens whatsoever. Isn't that just the most marvelous news you've ever heard? A block of ice seemed to materialize in my stomach, its chill spreading through my veins. $300,000. It was a number I knew intimately, a figure that haunted my own financial spreadsheets, a looming shadow over my future. Ethan, my younger brother by 2 years, also a fresh law school graduate, also newly admitted to the bar. His path, it seemed, was being paved with gold, while mine felt like an uphill slog through quicksand. Wow, Mom. I managed, the word catching in my throat. That's really incredible for him. I glanced at Maya. Her brow was furrowed, her usual cheerful expression clouded with a concern that mirrored my own sudden, sick feeling. Oh, he's just over the moon, of course. Mom chirped on, completely oblivious to the bomb she'd just detonated in my world. He said it's like a massive weight has been lifted. He can finally breathe and just focus on impressing everyone at his new firm. He's already talking about the partners he's going to network with. Then, as if suddenly remembering my existence, her tone shifted slightly. Oh, Adam, and how's your bar prep going, dear? You're studying hard, I hope. It's going, I said, the understatement of the century. I took a steadying breath, the question I had to ask forming with a leaden weight. Speaking of loans, Mom, now that you've helped Ethan out like that, is there any kind of similar family plan for my debt? It's pretty much the same amount, you know. A fractional pause. Then Dad's voice, deeper, more resonant, and tinged with an unmistakable note of paternal authority, came on the line. He must have been listening on speaker. Well, Adam, son, you know the situation. You're a different breed than Ethan. Always have been. You're a survivor. You always land on your feet. Ethan, well, corporate law at a firm like Sterling and Cromwell is a real pressure cooker. He needs this leg up, this clear runway to really take off. Besides, his voice took on a slightly self-congratulatory tone. We've already poured a significant amount into this celebration we're throwing for him. You know, the debt-free and bound for glory party. It's going to be quite the affair. Mom's voice seamlessly re-entered the conversation, smooth and placating, as if explaining a perfectly reasonable, albeit complex, equation to a slightly slow child. Exactly, dear. Ethan's always been so much more sensitive to these kinds of financial pressures. You know how he gets. And ever since that awful bout of pneumonia he had when he was just a little boy, bless his heart, we've always felt we needed to make things a bit smoother for him. You're built tougher, Adam. You always manage. Tougher, resourceful, independent. These were the labels they'd plastered on me throughout my life, convenient justifications for their consistent, unwavering focus on Ethan. It wasn't that they didn't love me, I supposed. It was just that their love for Ethan manifested as active support, while their love for me seemed to be expressed as a kind of benign neglect, a confident assumption that I'd simply figure things out on my own. The call ended soon after, with cheerful reminders about Ethan's upcoming party. My attendance, of course, was not optional. I was expected to be there, front and center, the dutifully proud older brother, applauding Ethan's latest triumph. I hung up the phone, the silence in the small apartment suddenly deafening, broken only by the AC's mournful sigh. Maya had closed her contract's textbook, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. $300,000? She repeated, her voice low and tight. And just nothing for you? Not even a discussion? Adam, after all those extra shifts you pulled at the university library, working late nights when you should have been studying, after all the competitive scholarships you had to fight tooth and nail for because they told you they couldn't stretch to co-sign for more loans for you. Apparently, I'm tougher, I said, the word leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. And Ethan is more sensitive to pressure. This wasn't a new script. This was a rerun of a show I'd been forced to watch my entire life. But this episode, with its six-figure price tag, felt particularly egregious. Ethan himself wasn't malicious. He wasn't conniving. He was just blissfully, comfortably accustomed to the path before him being meticulously cleared by a parental bulldozer, every obstacle removed, every sharp edge smoothed. My mind, a reluctant historian, began to unspool the familiar litany of past grievances. Ethan's childhood pneumonia, a terrifying ordeal for any parent, had undeniably reshaped their approach. He became the precious, fragile one, the one to be perpetually shielded and supported. My own early, often necessary, displays of independence, figuring out how to fix my own bike because it's always had to be the newest and shiniest model, acing tests without any parental hovering because their attention was focused on Ethan's struggles with basic arithmetic, were not seen as cries for attention or signs of neglect, but rather celebrated as proof of my inherent resilience. "Oh, look at Adam," Dad would say with a proud chuckle. "He doesn't need any help from us. He's got it all figured out." It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I remembered countless birthdays. Ethan would get the latest gaming console, the expensive remote control car, the trip to Disney World. I get a sensible sweater, a book, a pat on the head, and the implicit understanding that my needs were simpler, less demanding. They'd enthusiastically funded Ethan's series of ill-fated entrepreneurial summer projects, a disastrous attempt at a custom t-shirt business that left them with boxes of misspelled shirts, an even more chaotic dog-walking empire that resulted in several neighborhood disputes. These were indulgently written off as valuable learning experiences for his future in business. Meanwhile, my actual earnings from my grueling part-time jobs during college, the ones that paid for my textbooks, my food, my ridiculously overpriced student health insurance, were met with a simple nod and a, "That's good, Adam. Very responsible of you." Even Aunt Carol, Dad's sharp-witted, kind-hearted sister, had noticed the glaring disparity over the years. I had faint, warm memories of her trying to subtly intervene when I was younger. She'd make a point of taking me on special outings, just the two of us, to museums or baseball games. She'd praise my academic achievements, my debate team victories, directly and loudly to Dad and Mom at boisterous family gatherings. Their response was always a variation on the same theme, a benign smile, a dismissive wave of the hand. "Oh, Adam's fine, Carol. He's so self-sufficient, that one. He doesn't need all that fuss. It's really Ethan we need to keep a closer eye on, make sure he's getting all the support he needs." Aunt Carol would shoot me a look then, a complex expression that mingled sympathy with a shared frustration, a silent acknowledgement of the family's unspoken, deeply ingrained bias. The ostentatious invitation to Ethan's debt-free and bound for glory party was stuck to my ancient refrigerator with a rapidly failing magnet, a constant, mocking reminder. Embossed cardstock, pretentious, flowing script. It felt less like an invitation to a celebration and more like a royal summons to witness his anointing, to publicly affirm his status as the chosen son. "This isn't just about the money, Adam," Maya said softly, her hand finding mine, her touch grounding me. "It's about acknowledgement. It's about respect. They've been devaluing your efforts, your achievements, your entire life." She was right, of course. But this time, something deep within me shifted, hardened. It wasn't just the familiar, weary sting of being overlooked. A cold, hard knot of resolve was beginning to form in its place. I was tired of being the silent, stoic supporting actor in my own family's ongoing drama. I was tired of their narrative. My one true intellectual sanctuary, my guiding star throughout the often bewildering labyrinth of law school, had been Professor Evelyn Reed. My thesis advisor, she was a formidable presence in the law faculty, brilliant, incisive, no-nonsense, with an almost unnerving ability to dissect an argument or a person down to their core components. She respected my quiet intensity, my often unfashionable commitment to public interest law, a field my father frequently and loudly dismissed as idealistic charity work with no real money in it. Months ago, spurred by her unwavering belief in my potential, I had poured countless hours, late nights fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer determination, into an application for the Scales of Justice National Fellowship. It was one of the most prestigious and competitive postgraduate programs in the country, renowned for launching the careers of lawyers dedicated to high-impact public law. It was a long shot, an audacious dream for someone like me. But Professor Reed had been adamant. "Your mind, Adam," she'd said one afternoon, her gaze sharp as she tapped my heavily annotated thesis, "is wasted on anything less than a relentless pursuit of true justice. You have a voice that needs to be heard. This fellowship will give you the platform." A few days before Ethan's glorified debt relief coronation, the four of us, Mom, Dad, Ethan, and I, had a somewhat strained family dinner at their house. Dad, expansive after a couple of glasses of his favorite Cabernet, was in fine form, holding forth on Ethan's brilliant future. "So, Adam," he said, turning to me with a magnanimous air, swirling his wine, still set on that public defender gig? Noble, I suppose, noble. Hope you can make rent with that kind of work, though. He chuckled, a self-satisfied sound, as if he'd delivered a particularly witty bon mot. Ethan, on the other hand, his voice swelled with pride. "Mr. Charles Harrison himself, the managing partner at Sterling and Cromwell, is going to be at your party on Saturday. A massive opportunity for you to shine, son. Make those connections." Ethan, to his credit, had the grace to look a little uncomfortable at the blatant comparison, but he still managed a small, pleased smile. "Yeah, Dad. I'm really looking forward to talking with him." He then mentioned, almost casually, that his law school classmate, Chad Peterson, would also be there. Chad. I remembered him from a few inter-school mixers, smarmy, obsequious to anyone he perceived as important, and a notorious gossip, always bragging about his own supposedly stellar prospects while subtly undercutting others. "Chad's been saying for weeks he's going to get Harrison's ear all night," Ethan added with a slight eye roll. The following morning, an email with a subject line that made my heart simultaneously leap and plummet landed in my inbox. It was from Professor Reed, Urgent Scales of Justice Fellowship. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked it open. "Adam," the email read, "I have significant news regarding the Scales of Justice National Fellowship. News that might recontextualize a few things for you. Could you please come to my office this afternoon at 3? Professor Reed's office, a familiar haven olfactory notes of old leather, aging paper, and freshly brewed Earl Grey tea, felt different that afternoon. There was an almost palpable energy in the air. She gestured for me to sit, her usually stern expression softened by a rare, almost indiscernible smile playing at the corners of her lips. She got straight to the point, her keen, intelligent eyes fixed unwaveringly on mine. "The selection committee was unanimous, Adam," she said, her voice calm, but carrying an undercurrent of excitement. "Your proposal on establishing new legal frameworks for corporate accountability in environmental disasters, it wasn't just well-researched and well-argued. It was, in their words, groundbreaking and visionary. You've been awarded the Scales of Justice National Fellowship." The words seemed to hang in the air, incandescent. I gripped the arms of the chair, trying to process the enormity of what she'd just said. The Scales of Justice National Fellowship. Me. It was the kind of honor I'd barely allowed myself to dream of. She continued, her voice steady, laying out the life-altering details. A director-level position at the prestigious National Environmental Law Foundation, headquartered in San Francisco. A very substantial starting salary, one that far exceeded what I could have hoped for in my first few years of practice, certainly more than enough to live comfortably even in the notoriously expensive Bay Area. A dedicated research budget to pursue my proposed project. And then, the words that made my breath catch in my throat. Furthermore, Adam, as a testament to the philanthropic commitment of the foundation underwriting this fellowship, the award includes the complete and immediate nullification of all your outstanding student loan debt. Debt-free, just like Ethan. But this wasn't a gift born of parental favoritism or a desire to smooth a supposedly sensitive nature. This was earned. This was recognition. A wave of elation, so potent and overwhelming it almost buckled my knees, washed over me, closely followed by a profound sense of vindication. Professor, I began, my voice hoarse, choked with emotion. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me enough to push me to apply. Say you'll accept, Adam, she said, her smile finally breaking through, warm and genuine. You earned this, every bit of it. And then, perhaps, her eyes took on a shrewd, strategic glint. We can discuss the optimal timing and venue for announcing such significant news. I took a deep breath, the implications of her subtle suggestion beginning to dawn on me. I told her about my parents, their recent grand financial gesture for Ethan, his upcoming Bound for Glory party. Her expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of sharp understanding in her eyes. Indeed, she murmured thoughtfully, achievements of this caliber, Adam, have a unique way of speaking for themselves, and they often resonate most powerfully in the presence of those who, perhaps, need to hear their message most clearly. Mr. Charles Harrison, I believe, sits on the honorary board of the foundation awarding your fellowship. He will certainly be most interested in this development, and he will be attending your brother's celebration, will he not? A slow, deliberate understanding solidified within me. This wasn't just about personal victory anymore. This was an opportunity, a chance to reframe a narrative that had been unfairly skewed for my entire life. They believe Ethan is their masterpiece, Professor. I said, a newfound steadiness, a steely resolve in my voice. The one truly worthy of their investment, their pride. They've made my lesser chosen path quite clear to me over the years. Then I believe, Adam, Professor Reed stated, her gaze firm and unwavering, that it is high time your considerable achievements had an equally considerable voice. Will you be there, Professor? I asked, the plan now fully formed in my mind, a sense of agency, of control over my own story, surging through me in a way I hadn't felt in years. She nodded, a look of keen anticipation in her eyes. Adam, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I shared the news and the burgeoning plan with Maya later that evening. Her initial stunned silence quickly gave way to a whoop of joyous laughter. Her eyes lit up with a fierce, protective pride. Oh my God, Adam, this is beyond incredible, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. You have to do this. You absolutely have to. This isn't about revenge. It's not about trying to upstage Ethan. This is about claiming your truth, your worth. It's time for them to finally see you, Adam, to understand what you've accomplished on your own. She became my co-conspirator, my strategist. She helped me prepare, not just by ensuring my one good suit was impeccably pressed and my shoes shined to a high gloss, but by reinforcing my mindset, by reminding me of my strength, my intellect, my inherent value, which had nothing to do with parental approval or financial handouts. Walk in there with your head held high, Adam, she'd said, her gaze intense. This isn't just an announcement. It's a declaration. The night of Ethan's party arrived with an almost cinematic sense of occasion. The Grand City Hotel ballroom was a spectacle of extravagant excess. Towering floral arrangements perfumed the air, mingling with the scent of expensive champagne. Ice sculptures, intricately carved into leaping dolphins and gavels, glinted under strategically placed spotlights. A massive, professionally printed banner hung above the oversized mahogany bar, its gold lettering gleaming, congratulating Ethan Keller, the future of law, debt-free and bound for glory. A string quartet played Vivaldi in one corner, their elegant music almost drowned out by the boisterous laughter and self-important chatter of the guests. My parents were in their element. Richard, my father, was holding court near the entrance, his voice booming as he greeted arriving dignitaries from the local legal community, his hand already extended to shake that of Mr. Harrison, who had just walked in. Susan, my mother, fluttered amongst the guests like a brightly colored, slightly anxious butterfly, her smile fixed, her eyes constantly scanning the room, presumably to ensure Ethan was always the center of the most important conversations. Ethan himself, looking dapper in a new tailored suit, another parental gift, no doubt, was surrounded by a gaggle of his admiring law school peers, including the aforementioned Chad Peterson, who was already loudly recounting some exaggerated tale of his own brilliance, clearly trying to position himself within Mr. Harrison's line of sight. Maya and I made our entrance, a quiet counterpoint to the surrounding opulence. We were composed, and I hoped, exuded an air of understated confidence. Mom rushed over, bestowing a fleeting, air-like kiss on my cheek. "Adam, darling, so glad you could make it. You look nice. Do try some of these exquisite lobster canapes." Ethan picked them out himself. You know, he has such sophisticated taste. "Oh, and please, darling." Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, her eyes darting towards Mr. Harrison, who was now engaged in conversation with Dad. "Try not to monopolize Mr. Harrison when you get a chance to say hello. Ethan really needs that quality FaceTime with him tonight. It's crucial for his networking." The casualness of the dismissal, the ingrained assumption that I would somehow be a social impediment to Ethan's glorious ascent, barely registered as a sting anymore. It was just the baseline of our family dynamic. Expected, normal. Aunt Carol, ever observant, found me lingering near the elaborate, multi-tiered cheese display, a mountain of dairy that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She gave me a warm, genuine hug, her eyes, so like my father's but infinitely kinder, twinkling with a knowing light. "You look like you've got a secret up your sleeve, nephew," she murmured, her hand briefly, reassuringly, squeezing my arm. "A good one, I reckon. About time, too." I just smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that I hoped conveyed a fraction of the anticipation churning within me. The speeches began after most guests had availed themselves generously of the open bar. Dad, his face flushed with pride and expensive wine, took the microphone. His voice, amplified by the sound system, filled the ballroom. He waxed lyrical, almost poetically, about Ethan's effortless brilliance, his innate, intuitive understanding of the complex tapestry of jurisprudence, his preordained destiny for greatness within the hallowed halls of corporate law. He spoke, with a catch in his voice, of their profound joy and parental pride in removing any and all financial obstacles from his destined path, so that his prodigious, once-in-a-generation talents can truly shine, unburdened and unfettered. It was a rhetorical masterclass in parental projection and selective memory. It was Ethan's turn. He stepped up to the microphone, basking in the golden glow of our parents' adoration and the assembled guests' polite applause. He thanked our parents effusively, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so incredibly, overwhelmingly grateful to my amazing parents," he said, his gaze sweeping over Mom and Dad, "for their unwavering belief in me, for their constant support, and for this truly incredible gift of a debt-free start. It just goes to show," he added, his voice taking on a slightly more philosophical tone, "that when you demonstrate real promise, when you have genuine dedication, people are willing to invest in you to clear your path. It's a launch pad that not everyone gets, a phenomenal advantage, and I intend to make the absolute most of it to make a real, significant impact in the world of law." He even glanced briefly, almost unconsciously, in my direction, a fleeting, perhaps unintentional acknowledgement of my different, far less supported journey. It wasn't overtly malicious, not intentionally cruel, but landed with the familiar, heavy thud of the family's long-established, deeply ingrained narrative. Ethan, the star. Adam, the reliable, if unremarkable, supporting player. Just as Dad was beaming, preparing to raise a champagne flute to propose the main, effusive toast to Ethan, Professor Evelyn Reed made her entrance. She hadn't sought me out immediately upon arrival. preferring, I suspected, to make her presence known at a moment of her choosing. She was an elegant, commanding figure, her silver hair impeccably styled, her tailored suit radiating an aura of quiet authority. A hush fell over the section of the room where several prominent legal figures, including the much-courted Mr. Harrison, were gathered. Mr. Harrison, spotting her, immediately excused himself from his conversation and greeted her with obvious warmth and deep professional respect. They exchanged a few words, then with perfect, almost theatrical timing, as the applause for Ethan began to die down, Professor Reed stepped forward, her voice clear, calm, and carrying easily through the suddenly attentive ballroom. "Richard, Susan, if I may interject for just a moment," she began, her tone polite but undeniably authoritative. "While we are all here tonight celebrating Ethan's bright and undoubtedly promising future, and rightly so, I have another rather significant announcement to share, one that also concerns the Keller family's already impressive and ongoing contribution to the legal profession." A confused, intrigued murmur rippled through the crowd. My parents looked utterly perplexed, their smiles frozen mid-beam. Ethan frowned slightly, a flicker of apprehension crossing his usually confident face. "Many of you here tonight," Professor Reed continued, her gaze sweeping the room before landing briefly, powerfully, encouragingly on me, are familiar with the extreme prestige and competitiveness of the Scales of Justice National Fellowship. It is arguably the most coveted postgraduate fellowship in the entire country, awarded this year, after an exhaustive national search, to only 3 graduating law students from a pool of hundreds of exceptional candidates. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, building the anticipation. "I am, therefore, immensely proud and indeed utterly delighted to announce to you all tonight that one of this year's 3 distinguished recipients is your son and my outstanding former student, Adam Keller." You could have heard a champagne bubble pop in the ensuing silence. It was a thick, stunned stillness, broken only by a few indrawn gasps. Then a louder, more excited, more incredulous buzz began to build. Chad Peterson, I noted with a sliver of dark, almost shameful satisfaction, had gone a ghastly shade of pale. His jaw was literally hanging open. I vaguely recalled him boasting some months back, with insufferable arrogance, about how he was a virtual shoe-in for that very fellowship. Professor Reed, a consummate professional, wasn't finished. Her voice retained its calm authority, yet there was an undeniable edge of triumph in it now. Adam was selected for his groundbreaking, truly innovative proposal on establishing new, robust legal frameworks for corporate accountability in large-scale environmental disasters. The fellowship includes a director-level position at the highly respected National Environmental Law Foundation, headquartered in San Francisco. She paused again, then delivered the coup de grace, her eyes meeting my parents' stunned, disbelieving gazes directly. The fellowship also provides a very significant starting salary and a substantial dedicated research budget. And as a testament to the deep philanthropic commitment of the foundation underwriting this prestigious award, it also includes the complete and immediate nullification of all of Adam's outstanding student loan debt. She then turned slightly, gracefully, towards Mr. Harrison, who was watching this entire unfolding drama with an expression of fascinated intensity. "And Charles," she said, addressing him with the easy familiarity of long-standing professional colleagueship, "I believe you currently sit on the honorary board of the foundation. Adam's work, his vision for this project, is something I am quite certain you will find exceptionally compelling and timely." The silence that followed this pronouncement was electric, charged with a palpable mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. It was broken, not by applause, but by Mr. Harrison, a man whose undivided attention my father and Ethan had been so desperately, so obviously, courting all evening. He let out a low, impressed whistle, a sound that cut through the stillness like a blade. He turned, his entire focus, his considerable presence, shifting like a searchlight, and strode directly, purposefully, towards me. He bypassed my still frozen, speechless parents and a visibly bewildered, almost shell-shocked Ethan, as if they were suddenly invisible, irrelevant. Adam Keller? Mr. Harrison extended his hand towards me, his eyes sharp and intelligent, alight with genuine, professional interest. Your proposal on environmental accountability? I had the privilege of reading the abstract when the fellowship finalist dossiers were circulated to the board members. Astounding work, young man. Truly innovative and desperately needed. Absolutely astounding. He gripped my hand firmly. We need to talk. That kind of visionary thinking is precisely what the legal world, and indeed the world at large, needs right now. I shook his hand, a sudden, unexpected calm descending over me, a sense of profound, quiet certainty. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice steady clear. I like that very much. I found myself speaking with him for several minutes, easily and fluently discussing the nuances of my research, the core arguments of my proposal, feeling a sense of validation that was entirely separate from and infinitely more potent than the stunned silence of my family. Maya was beaming beside me, her hand finding mine, her fingers lacing through mine in a grip that conveyed pure, unadulterated pride. Across the ballroom, I saw Aunt Carol. She slowly, deliberately, raised her champagne flute in a silent, triumphant toast, her eyes, so like my father's yet so different, shining with a warmth and a pride that felt far more genuine, far more meaningful than any I had ever received from my own parents. The rest of the party passed in a surreal haze of shifting dynamics and realigned perceptions. Legal professionals, many of whom had barely afforded me a cursory glance earlier in the evening, now sought me out, eager to offer congratulations, to inquire about my fellowship, my research, my plans for the future. My parents remained largely rooted to their spot near the now-abandoned head table, their faces a comical, yet also poignant, tableau of shock, confusion, and a dawning, uncomfortable horror as their carefully constructed, lifelong narrative of Ethan, the chosen one, the golden boy, publicly, spectacularly, unraveled before their very eyes, and before the eyes of their entire social and professional circle. Ethan himself looked lost, a ship adrift in a sudden, unexpected storm, watching the scene unfold around him with a complex, unreadable mixture of emotions playing across his face. Disbelief, certainly, but also something I couldn't quite decipher. Jealousy? Shame? Perhaps a dawning, unwelcome understanding. The next day, I initiated the conversation. I didn't wait for them to approach me, to try and spin the events of the previous night. I called them, my voice calm, firm, and requested a private meeting, just my parents, Ethan, and me at my small apartment that afternoon. I needed to do this on my own terms in my own space. They arrived looking subdued, a stark contrast to their boisterous pre-party selves. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't resort to accusations or angry recriminations. Instead, I laid out calmly, factually, methodically, how their decades of blatant disparity, their consistent, often unthinking choices, were not just hurtful on a personal level, but were fundamentally based on flawed assumptions about my capabilities, my resilience, my supposed lack of needs, and conversely, about Ethan's inherent fragility and his supposedly greater requirements for support and intervention. Your unwavering support for Ethan, I said, looking directly at my father, then my mother, and what you probably consider benign neglect for me, your assumption that I would always just be fine, created a reality that I was forced to navigate, a series of obstacles I had to overcome largely on my own. My success, this fellowship, it isn't despite you, not entirely, but it is most certainly not because of your focused, equitable support for both your sons. Because that, quite simply, never existed. Mom was the first to break the heavy silence that followed my words. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. We just... Adam, after Ethan's terrible illness when he was so little, it frightened us so badly. We wanted to protect him, to shield him from any hardship. We thought he needed more help, more cushioning from the world. Dad, however, was still clinging to his justifications, though his usual confident bluster was significantly diminished, his voice lacking its customary authoritative ring. You were always so independent, Adam. So capable from such a young age. We honestly, truly, thought you preferred it that way, that you didn't need us meddling in your affairs, that you thrived on your own. Independence wasn't a preference, Dad. I stated, my voice even devoid of accusation but firm with conviction. It was a requirement, a necessity that you, both of you, imposed through your choices, through your actions, through your inactions. There's a profound, fundamental difference. It was Ethan who delivered the greatest surprise of that difficult afternoon. He had been quiet throughout my recital, his gaze fixed on his hands, which were clasped tightly in his lap. Now, he looked up, his face pale, etched with a humility, a genuine contrition that I had never witnessed in him before. Adam, he began, his voice low, almost a whisper. I've been an idiot, a complete, oblivious, spoiled idiot. My whole life I've swum in the privilege, basked in the attention, and I never once questioned it. I never once truly considered how it must have been for you. He took a ragged breath. Hearing Professor Reed talk about that fellowship last night, what you actually did to earn it. Chad Peterson applied for that, you know. He bragged for weeks, for months, that he was a shoo-in, that it was practically his. You didn't just beat him, Adam, you beat everyone. And I stood up there at that party, a party celebrating a debt paid off by Mom and Dad, talking about my launch pad. He shook his head, a look of genuine self-disgust contorting his features. That whole celebration, it feels utterly disgusting to me now. I am so sorry, Adam. Truly, deeply sorry for my part in all of this, for my blindness. His apology, so unexpected, so seemingly sincere, landed like a bomb on wounds I hadn't even fully realized were still so raw. It didn't magically erase years of imbalance, of feeling like a second-class citizen in my own family, but it opened a door, however small, to the possibility of a different kind of future, a different kind of relationship with my brother. In the weeks that followed, as Maya and I immersed ourselves in the exhilarating, slightly terrifying chaos of preparing for our cross-country move to San Francisco, she, too, had landed a fantastic associate position at a well-regarded firm there, entirely on her own considerable merit. Things began to subtly, almost imperceptibly shift. Ethan started calling me occasionally, not for favors, not with his old, easy assumption of fraternal obligation, but for advice, for my opinion on legal matters, on career choices. There was a newfound respect, a tentative deference in his tone that had never been there before. He even told me, his voice tinged with a self-deprecating humor, that he'd started volunteering a few hours a week at a local legal aid clinic, helping underserved clients navigate the baffling complexities of housing court, something that would have been utterly unthinkable for the Ethan of just a few months prior. Mom made a concerted effort to connect. She'd send me links to articles related to environmental law, ask hesitant, often ill-informed, but always earnest questions about my upcoming research, my new role at the foundation. It was a clumsy, sometimes awkward effort, but it was an effort nonetheless, a tentative reaching out across a chasm that had been years in the making. Dad remained more distant, more reserved. He talked to others. I heard through the family grapevine via Aunt Carol, with a newfound, slightly bewildered pride about both my successful sons, but his direct interactions with me were still strained, tinged with a polite formality. The carefully constructed illusion of his role as the strategic kingmaker for his anointed star son had been irrevocably shattered, and he was clearly still grappling with the disorienting pieces of that broken narrative. He did, one afternoon, awkwardly offer me a substantial check for your move, Adam, for settling in, getting yourself established out there. I politely but firmly declined. Thanks, Dad, I said, trying to keep my tone gentle. But the fellowship is very generous. I'm good. Truly. I've got this. Lying in our new, bright, airy San Francisco apartment a month later, the fog rolling in over the Golden Gate Bridge visible from our ridiculously overpriced window, with Maya asleep beside me, her breathing soft and even, the city lights painting shifting, ephemeral patterns on the ceiling, I felt a profound, pervasive sense of peace settle over me, a calm I hadn't realized I'd been missing for most of my life. The gnawing, persistent need for parental approval, the constant, subtle, underlying ache of being overlooked, undervalued, had finally, blessedly, subsided. The validation I had craved for so long hadn't come from them, not in the way I had once desperately imagined it might. It had come from Professor Reed's unwavering, incisive belief in my intellect and my purpose. It had come from Maya's steadfast, unconditional love and her fierce, intelligent support. It had come, in its own quiet, enduring way, from Aunt Carol's lifelong, subtle witnessing of my journey. And ultimately, most importantly, it had come from within myself, from the hard-won knowledge of what I had accomplished, not in spite of the odds, but against the odds that they had, in their own complex, misguided way, systematically, if unintentionally, stacked against me. The scales of justice in the small, personal courtroom of my own life had finally, at long last, found their equilibrium, not through their belated intervention or any grand, tearful reconciliation, but through my own counsel, my own quiet resilience, my own relentless perseverance. And the view from here, from this new vantage point, unburdened by crippling debt or their skewed, suffocating expectations, was clearer, brighter, and infinitely more promising than I could have ever dared to imagine. The path ahead was entirely mine, a future I had forged, not one that had been gifted. And it felt quite simply magnificent,